Hi, everybody. Mitch Tanenbaum here. Thanks for joining me today. This is the security news update for September 10th, 2023. In the security and privacy alerts, this never fails to amaze me. The CEO of Blockchain Capital lost $6 million to a cyber attack. What kind of cyber attack was this? This was a SIM swapping attack where someone convinced his phone company to go off and change the physical phone that his number was assigned to. And then his multi-factor authentication, which apparently was a text message, apparently, went to the hacker, and the hacker was able to empty his wallet. This is not very bright. In today's day and age, this is not the thing you go do. If you have something which is high security, do not protect it with a text message. That's just not safe. Excuse me. Next, um, I thought I'd try testing out the Colorado Consumer Privacy Act since I am a Colorado resident. And so I went to my car maker's website and said, tell me how I can use my Colorado privacy rights. And of course, I could not find anything there at all. They had a bot and an automated assistant. And I asked the bot, well, where do I find my Colorado Consumer Privacy Act rights? And the bot says, beats me. You want me to transfer you to a human being? Um, so I talked to the human being, and the human being said, huh? Which is not a good sign, never a good sign. So she transferred me to another person. Another person said, oh, no, this is not the right department. I need to transfer you to a different department. So finally, transferred me to a third department. That person apparently at least understood what it was I was asking, put me on hold for about 10 minutes, and then emailed me a link to a page which was not buried terribly far. It was only 2 levels down, but it wasn't indexed apparently. And on that page, it asked me for some basic information. And one of the things it asked for security purposes was my VIN number, which of course is not secret, right? That's you walk down the street, look in a person's car windshield, and you can see their VIN number, so that's not secret. And then it asked me some out of wallet questions from some credit bureau, like what car did you buy in the last 4 years? Was it a Dodge, a Chevy, or Ford, whatever? Which again is not terribly secure. Um, so anyway, they did all that, and they said, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "I want a copy of my data." And they said, well, we have 45 days to comply with this request. So we shall see what happens. I will update you on the results, and we'll see what we get. But it was a bit dicey, and I think if people were not persistent, they would not get the stuff. And we'll see what the Colorado Attorney General does in terms of, and this falls into the dark pattern category, right? You're making it much harder for people to opt out of them collecting and selling your data than they are for collecting the data. But we shall see. In the reference department, service desks, help desks, are under attack. This particular attack is of Okta customers. Okta is a big single sign-on vendor. Note that this is not a bug in Okta software. This is a pure human being, social engineering, the squishy part of cybersecurity. And what they're doing is trying to get the help desk to go off and reset the multi-factor authentication methods. They have, in this particular attack, they've collected enough information to sound semi-credible, and and apparently in some cases they are in fact being successful. So what this means is that your help desk folks need more training. They need to be very vigilant for these kinds of attacks because they're in the wild. And then you need to go off and figure out, well, what are you going to do to verify that the person is who they say they are? Now, obviously, if everybody's sitting in the same office and you can walk down the hall and say, "Hi, Mitch, did you just try to reset your password? Reset your," that's easy, but most companies aren't like that anymore, and so this becomes harder. If you need help with that, please reach out to us. Next, in the software, and this is some very interesting software. Countries, nations are trying very hard to kill encryption because it makes it much harder for them to snoop on you when they want to. In the UK, for example, there's this thing, I forget what it's called, the law, but there's this bill that they're trying to pass, which would require service providers to go off and break end-to-end encryption in order to go off and look for terrorism and kiddie porn and stuff like that. Nobody likes that stuff, right? So it's hard to argue. Well, trying to stop terrorism is a bad thing. No, that's a good thing. But the question is, is the cost of doing that, which is basically getting rid of encryption, worth the benefit of those few cases where you catch a stupid terrorist because they haven't gone to some either dark platform that you can't see or some form of encryption that you don't have a back door to. And the governments can't even protect their own data. The UK in the UK, they just published all the names and home addresses of all the police people in Northern Ireland, making it easy for terrorists to go off and kill them and their families. Um, so, if they can't even do that, can you imagine what happens if they have all the encryption keys to all the community? I mean, it's just a total disaster. Um, we shall see where it goes. But this new piece of software, which is called, God, I'm not doing good tonight. It's called, I'm looking here. Well, I can't think of what it's called. Anyway, it is a distributed, um, a 2023 version of Tor. Oh, it's called Veiled. Um, and it's a kind of a 2023 version of Tor. The idea being that it's a framework which you can go snap into your application, and now you have a, a distributed, non-centralized, um, no company running it, so there's nobody the police can go to and say, "Hey, you turn this off," because you can set up your own. It's open source. You can set up your own servers if you want to set up your own servers to run this thing on. So that's a real challenge. Obviously, the snoopers don't like that. But unlike in the 1980s when they threatened to put Phil Zimmerman in jail for publishing the specs for PGP, the encryption algorithm, which was popular back then, now once this thing gets out, it's going to be impossible to stop because there will be countries that will just thumb their nose at places like the UK and tell them to get lost, take a long walk off a short pier. So it's going to be interesting. This is still very early. We shall see how it works, but the idea here of just being able to snap this into your existing software, a new piece of software, and all of a sudden have a distributed, secure, um, hacker resistant encryption transport mechanism is pretty cool. Next, in the patches department, Apple announced a couple more 0 days. These are again with Apple, and bless their heart, they have in the early days when Steve Jobs was still alive, and the Apple operating system and ecosystem was very, very simple compared to the rest of the world. Apple didn't have a lot of bugs. And now, the Apple is trying to actually compete with the other folks and have software with functionality. They're running into the same problems everybody else is running into. So they're no worse, they're no better. They're just, the same as everybody else. So in this particular case, Citizen Labs discovered 2 new 0 days. They are no touch 0 days, meaning that the user does not need to do anything. These are the kinds of attacks that folks like the NSO group that makes Pegasus loves. The exploit is called Blast Pass. It works on a fully patched iPhone running iOS 16.6. Apple has released an emergency release because apparently this thing is being exploited in the wild. What they call an emergency release basically is one that's not really fully tested, but which is worse. a buggy release or people getting their phones compromised, and that puts Apple in kind of a really bad situation. Hopefully, they tested it reasonably well. But this is called 16.6.1 for the iPhone and 13.5.2 for the Mac. And that's in the patches department. In the legislative and legal activities, the SEC announced their new breach disclosure rules, which requires folks to, big companies, public companies, to go off and announce that they've been hacked, within 72 hours. So a real problem for big companies because big companies can't even figure out that they've been hacked. In fairness, it's 72 hours after you figure out that you've been hacked, and it's a problem. What these Republicans would like is for CISA, for the SEC to work with CISA, to CISA change their rules for what they want, turn CISA effectively into a regulatory agency, figure out a way for CISA to share with the SEC in real time the information they got, which not likely to happen, and then allow the SEC to share that information with that. None of that's going to happen. It's just not possible. The reality is, I think what these guys are complaining about is, some of their big corporate donors are saying, gee, we don't want to have to air our dirty laundry in public, and certainly not quickly before we've figured out a way how to spin it. So, see if you can kill this. Well, it's not going to happen because the Senate's not going to go for it, and neither is the White House. And the reality is the big companies are going to figure out how to deal with this, pretty quickly, and it's not going to be a huge problem for them. But they got to have something to whine about. Next, the U.S. is emulating some of the activities that Communist China is doing in order to control big tech platforms. In this case, this is the ongoing battle with TikTok, and the U.S. is asking to be able to examine U.S. TikTok facilities without much notice or any notice, block changes to the terms of service, their moderation policies, their privacy policies, veto the hiring of any executive, and a lot more. They would also make TikTok subject to extensive supervision by third parties, including a source code inspector. How many companies would just let some random third party come in and look at their source code, and require TikTok to make some security decisions secretly from their parent company, ByteDance. And to be honest, this seems pretty similar to what China is doing for U.S. social media companies that want to operate in China, U.S. businesses in general that want to operate in China. Unfortunately, the U.S. can't demand this from other U.S. companies because the law doesn't support that. But CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S., can demand this of ByteDance. We shall see what happens. This has been an ongoing negotiation for a long, long time, so we shall see. Next, as I mentioned a little while ago, the UK had a plan to require the scanning of encrypted messages for illegal content. This is in a bill that's called the Online Safety Bill. What Britain did not realize at the time when they proposed this wonderful idea is that a lot of big companies like Apple and Signal and WhatsApp and people like that says, well, just leave the UK. We don't care. It's not a big enough market to make any significant financial difference to us. So just go to hell. Needless to say, that was not what they wanted. First of all, that doesn't help solve the problem. And second of all, it's going to make the people that elect them very unhappy if their favorite platform goes away. So now they're saying, well, we're not actually going to remove that requirement from the bill, but what we're going to say is if there's not a realistic way of implementing that, then we're not going to enforce that. But if there is a way, then we are going to enforce that. So, it's not exactly a glowing endorsement. It's more like kicking the can down the road a little bit. But I guess we'll get what we get. We'll see what the bill does and whether or not companies decide to leave the UK based on the final text and whatever it is that the enforcers decide to do. But I think what happened there was the big tech companies, a number of them, called the UK's bluff, and the UK folded. Next, in education, the Cybersecurity Safety Review Board, which is kind of like the National Transportation Safety Board, um, reviewed the lapsus activities, uh, and there's some good stuff in there. You definitely need to read it. It's readable for the most part. It's relatively short, less than 60 pages, and there's some recommendations there, pages 39 to 50 of the actual PDF. Now, here's the thing: most of the recommendations are going to fall in the category of I don't wanna. Well, okay. So you have two choices. You can do what you would prefer not to do, or you can be hacked. That's a business decision, right? And obviously, you don't have to do all of them, you can do some of them. But clearly, this is a matter of you making a business decision of, what do you want to do? Do you want to go off and protect your company? Do you want to not get hit by a cyber attack or reduce the risk? Or do you worry about, gee, the employees are going to be unhappy because some things that they used to be able to do, they can't do? Uh, Next, in the breaches department, always the the fullest department of this newsletter, UK firm named Zon apparently was still using Windows 7. Apparently, nobody told them that it's no longer supported and not patched. They got hit by Lockbit. The Lockbit guys exfiltrated 10 gigabytes of sensitive military data. What they're claiming at this point is there are no classified data on this, which is probably a good thing because it's an unclassified system. So hopefully there's no classified data on there. Um, but they are a security company. They make security fencing now. Granted, they're in the physical security world, not the cybersecurity world. But hopefully their security fencing works better than their cybersecurity works. Um, and obviously people will figure that out, and the UK government will go off and I'm sure have something to say about that. Next, the golf sports equipment maker Callaway says that multiple Callaway brands were hacked. Um, Affects about 1 million users. Now, here's the key thing about this one. Um, it exposed passwords, which is no big deal. You change your password, and hopefully you're not reusing your password, so that's good. Um, but it also exposed a security question and answers along with some other information. Um, it only took them about a month, roughly. They discovered this breach. It started on August 1st. They discovered it on August 16th, and they're already notifying people. So that's good. But since this is not a credit card breach, you can't ask for a new credit card. That won't happen. Regarding security question answers, and I'm a big fan of this, make up the answers. It says, "What's your favorite car?" Oh, I don't know. It's a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, a Corvette Z05, whatever. Um, and don't necessarily use the same question answer on different websites. How you avoid getting confused is you put the questions and answers in your password vault. By the way, you should be using a password vault. If you need some recommendations about that, you can reach out to us as well. And it doesn't matter. There's only one case where that matters is if you're filling out a government form or some form for your bank or something like that, where they're trying to verify your information. In that case, you can't make it up. But with the exception of that, and that's few and far between, just make it up. If your favorite color is red, say it's green. If your first dog was a Chihuahua, say it was I don't know, a Dachshund. Just make the stuff up and don't reuse it. So that way, when it gets compromised, you don't care because A, it's not real. B, there's no place somebody can look to go figure out what the right answer is because you just made it up. And C, compromise of one side doesn't compromise other sides. Next, FreeCycle, which is an online service I had never heard of, but apparently it helps people get rid of stuff that they don't want anymore for free rather than putting it in a landfill, which is a good thing. They Good news is bad news is they didn't know they'd been hacked until the data was up for sale for several months on the dark web. The good news is they didn't have a lot of information. They had your user IDs, your emails, and weakly encrypted passwords. Um, so here's the thing: if you're not reusing passwords, which you shouldn't be after all this time, then the fact that the password is compromised only affects that particular website. If, however, you're like most people and you reuse passwords, then that's really a problem that it was weakly encrypted. Uh, Next, Twitter continues to morph, which is a good thing, I suppose. Certainly, if you like Twitter, and but not without privacy concerns. They've changed their terms of service to say they're going to go off and collect biometric information. They want to use it for safety, security, and identity purposes. Beyond that, they don't really provide much detail. Like, for example, how long are they going to keep it? Um, Apparently, this feature is only going to be limited to paid customers, which may be a reason not to become a paid customer. Um, and one of the things that they want to do, they say, is collect your government ID. Well, I don't know about you, but I trust social media, not just Twitter, all social media, um, about as far as I can throw them. And my guess is their security practices of protecting your government ID are going to be pretty poor, like most social media. So we shall see. Now, the other thing they want to do is they want to collect your employment and education history. So, I mean, I suppose they could go scrape that from LinkedIn, which of course they're anti-scraping. They don't want people scraping their stuff, but it's okay for them to scrape other people's stuff. Um, and that's to match you with potential jobs. Now, I mean, I could be wrong here, given many advertisers have decided that the platform is toxic to their brand and walked away. Does that mean that employers are going to go rush to Twitter to go off and find new people? Maybe. I'm sort of skeptical, but they're looking for revenue, so and they want to be all things to all people. So all this kind of puts them in a position where they have to go off and do this, but we shall see where this goes. Uh, Google is very close now to a lawsuit going to trial. We shall see if they figure out a way to settle this. But basically, it boils around Google's claiming that incognito mode is private. In fact, if you open a Chrome window, browser window, open an incognito window, first 5 words on that page say, now you can browse privately. Well, what these people are saying, which is actually accurate, is that no, it's not really private. The only thing it's private from is other people who happen to be sharing your user ID on your computer, which should be exactly 0 people. And Google said, well, if you read the license agreement, you'd know it wasn't really private. We just tell you it's private because, if we told you it wasn't private, then why would you bother to use it? So we shall see. And apparently, even inside Google, as far back as 2018, engineers were laughing about this incognito mode in private. They said, it's a crock, it's a crock, it's a crock, you know. So we shall see what happens with that. Next, the California Privacy Protection Agency, which is the organization that administrates the California Privacy Rights Act, has released draft cybersecurity audit and cyber risk assessment regulations for folks that have to do that. Even if you are not an organization that is required to comply with those regulations, I would definitely look at them and see how close you can get to complying with them because they're pretty good. So, and it's only a draft, so we'll see where it goes. And lastly, the security news bites for this week. If you want a .us domain, the folks that measure this thing say that the .us websites by and far, drown everybody else's websites used for phishing attacks. And that's because apparently the government doesn't bother to filter or vet anybody who wants to buy a .us domain. In theory, it's limited to U.S. citizens, U.S. companies, but GoDaddy, who the Department of Commerce has outsourced this task to, says, well, there's a checkbox on the form that says, yes, I am a U.S. citizen. Well, that's not exactly verification. So apparently you just lie and you can get a .us domain, and there's a huge amount of spam and attacks that come from .us domains as a result of that. Next, we have a bad week for crypto scammers. As CEO of a crypto company that was scamming out of $2 billion his customers, and his brother and sister were sentenced to something like 1,100 years in prison. I don't think he's going to be getting out, or that they're going to be getting out anytime soon. But they stole $2 billion, so that's, I guess, okay. Uh, CISA says that they are wrapping up the cyber incident reporting guide ahead of schedule. That's for folks that are considered critical infrastructure. Now, remember, there's a lot of people who don't think they're part of critical infrastructure, but are part of critical infrastructure. So this can apply to a lot of people, and definitely something to keep your eyes on. And is that encrypted app really secure? Well, the cops seem to continue to break these apps. They don't actually break the encryption math. What they do is they, figure out where the servers are. They take over the servers. They figure out where the endpoints are. They compromise the endpoints. There's a lot of ways around encryption that have nothing to do with breaking the math. Nobody's going to go off and try breaking the math. They're always going to try a much simpler method. So if you think you've got a secure app, well, first of all, number one, you really ought to be testing it using third-party testers. We'll be happy to help you with that too. But don't assume that it's secure just because on the web page it says it's secure, because it's probably not. With that, if you need help with any of this, please let us know. And until next time, stay safe.
Turnkey Cybersecurity and Privacy Solutions offers the complete cybersecurity program for small to medium-sized businesses. They include everything needed to secure your business and meet compliance requirements. Visit our website at turnkeycybersecurityandprivacysolutions.com to learn more.